Thor countered, his species equivalent of a skeptical expression forming on his features. Frost laughed. No, but it should be, especially after what happened with New Montana. You're telling me that the most feared fleet in the galaxy is coming here? To this pathetic little backwater planet? Admiral Zix-Van scoffed, his 4 eye stalks quivering with amusement. What a waste of perfectly good fear. Captain Loris straightened her carapace, her mandibles clicking in annoyance. The intelligence is solid, sir. The humans have dispatched the 7th Fleet. ETA is approximately 48 hours. Humans! Zix-Van practically spat the word. Always sticking their fleshy noses where they don't belong. What could they possibly want with... What's this place called again? Helvoria Prime, sir. Right. Helvoria Prime. Sounds like a fancy name for a rock with delusions of grandeur. The bridge of the Krathvar flagship. Inevitable conquest fell silent as the Admiral paced across the polished obsidian floor. His golden armor reflected the dim purple lighting, casting eerie shadows across his jagged exoskeleton. Tell me again why we should care about this feared fleet. These humans, with their soft bodies and easily punctured organs. His mandibles formed what passed for a smile among the Krathvar. It's almost adorable that they think they can challenge us. Lieutenant Krav, the youngest officer on the bridge, cleared his throat nervously. Sir, with all due respect, the human 7th Fleet has a reputation. A reputation? The Admiral's laughter was like stones being crushed. For what, bringing snacks and having group hugs? For annihilation, sir, Krav replied, his voice dropping to a near whisper. They don't call them the Reapers for nothing. Captain Olivia Torres of the Earth Fleet carrier, Relentless, watched the holographic display of Helvoria Prime rotate slowly above the command table. The blue-green planet looked peaceful from this distance. Hard to imagine it was currently under the brutal occupation of the Krathvar Dominion. So that's it, huh? Commander Dmitry Volkov said, folding his arms across his broad chest. Doesn't look like much. Neither did Proxima 4, Torres replied, and we all remember how that turned out. Volkov's face darkened. Some of us more than others. Torres nodded, understanding the unspoken grief. She'd lost people at Proxima 4, too. Everyone in the 7th had. Captain! Lieutenant Kaido Nakamura called from his station. Incoming transmission from Fleet Admiral Okonkwo. Put her through, Torres ordered, straightening her uniform jacket. The stern face of Fleet Admiral Imani Okonkwo materialized above the tactical display, replacing the image of Helvoria Prime. Even as a hologram, her presence commanded respect. Captain Torres, status report. We're holding position just outside the Helvorian system, Admiral. All ships accounted for and ready for action. The Krathvar don't appear to have detected us yet. Good. I don't need to remind you of the stakes here. No, ma'am. The Helvorian refugees were quite clear about what's happening on their homeworld. Okonkwo's expression hardened. This rescue operation has been designated Priority Alpha by the Security Council. Intelligence suggests the Krathvar are using the Helvorian population for experimentation. A chill ran through the bridge crew. What kind of experimentation? Volkov asked, his Russian accent thickening as it always did when he was angry. The kind that violates every line of the Galactic Conventions, Okonkwo replied grimly. Genetic manipulation, forced evolutions, biological weapons testing, the works. Torres felt her stomach turn. Sounds like the Krathvar, all right. There's more, Okonkwo continued. We believe they're specifically targeting Helvorian children. The bridge fell silent. Torres could feel the temperature of the room drop several degrees, not from any environmental controls, but from the cold rage settling into every human present. Well, Torres said finally, her voice dangerously calm. I guess we'll just have to introduce ourselves properly, won't we? Okonkwo's hologram nodded. The 7th Fleet has been given complete operational discretion, Captain. The Diplomatic Corps has already issued the standard warnings and humanitarian requests. They were ignored. They always are, Volkov muttered. You know the protocols, Captain, Okonkwo said. Try to minimize civilian casualties, but the primary objective is the liberation of Helvoria Prime and the cessation of all Krathvar experimentation activities. Understood, Admiral, Torres replied. And the Krathvar forces? A grim smile crossed Okonkwo's face. Show them why the 7th Fleet is called the Reapers. Admiral, we've detected unusual gravitational distortions near the outer marker of the system, Lieutenant Krav reported, his claws dancing nervously across his console. Admiral Zix-Van waved a dismissive appendage. Probably just another asteroid field. This system is full of space junk. Sir, Captain Loris interjected. The pattern matches known human slipspace signatures. Fine, the Admiral sighed dramatically. Raise shields, power up weapons arrays, standard hostile approach protocols. He settled back into his command throne. Let's see what these terrifying humans look like. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the darkness of space beyond Helvoria's orbit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then reality tore open. What began as a pinprick of light rapidly expanded into a swirling vortex of blue-white energy. From within this artificial wormhole emerged the first ships of Earth's 7th Fleet. The bridge of the inevitable conquest fell silent as vessel after vessel materialized. First came the destroyers, sleek predatory ships with the hammerhead configuration typical of human naval design. Then the cruisers, their heavy armor plating gleaming dully in the light of Helvoria's sun. Support vessels followed, then the massive bulk of carrier ships, each one capable of launching hundreds of strike craft. And finally, dwarfing them all, the Relentless itself, a supercarrier that seemed to stretch on forever, bristling with weapon emplacements and launch bays. That, Admiral Zixvan said quietly, is significantly more ships than I expected. Captain Loris's voice was tight. Sir, I count 47 capital ships plus support vessels. 48, Lieutenant Krav corrected, his voice cracking. Another just came through. Zixvan rose from his command throne, his exoskeleton making a soft clicking sound as he moved to the view screen. Open a channel. Let's see what these humans want. Captain, we're being hailed by the Krathvar flagship, Lieutenant Nakamura reported. Torres nodded. On screen. The face, if you could call it that, of Admiral Zixvan appeared on the main display. The Krathvar commander looked exactly like the briefing hollows, 4 eye stalks protruding from a chitinous head, mandibles framing a mouth full of serrated teeth, and skin that resembled polished obsidian. This is Admiral Zixvan of the Krathvar Dominion, the alien said, his voice translated by the ship's computers into flat, emotionless English. You are trespassing in Dominion-claimed space. State your purpose or be destroyed. Torres stepped forward. This is Captain Olivia Torres of the Earth Fleet carrier Relentless, commanding the 7th Fleet. We are here on behalf of the United Earth Government and the Galactic Council to demand the immediate withdrawal of all Krathvar forces from Helvoria Prime, and the release of all Helvorian citizens currently under your care. Zixvan's eye stalks twitched, a sign of amusement, according to the xenopsychology briefings. Captain Torres, perhaps you are unfamiliar with Krathvar territorial law. Helvoria Prime is now part of the Dominion. Its resources and inhabitants are ours to use as we see fit. And perhaps you're unfamiliar with the Galactic Conventions on Sentient Rights, Torres countered, keeping her voice level, which your use of the Helvorian people violates in approximately 37 different ways. The conventions, Zixvan said dismissively, are a human construct. The Krathvar Dominion does not recognize their authority. Then perhaps you'll recognize the authority of the 48 capital ships currently aimed at your position, Torres replied with a thin smile. You have 6 hours to begin evacuation procedures. Any Krathvar vessels or personnel remaining after that time will be considered hostile combatants. Zixvan leaned closer to the screen, his mandibles clicking rapidly. You would risk interstellar war for this insignificant planet? For the people on it? Without hesitation. Even your vaunted 7th Fleet cannot stand against the might of the entire Dominion. Torres smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Would you like to test that theory, Admiral? Because I've got 19 battle groups who'd be happy to run the experiment. Zixvan's eye stalks pulled back, a sign of anger or surprise. You have made a grave miscalculation, Captain Torres. The Krathvar do not respond to threats. Funny, Torres said. I don't recall making a threat. I simply outlined what's going to happen in the next 6 hours. Whether it happens the easy way or the hard way is entirely up to you. She made a cutting motion across her throat, and Lieutenant Nakamura terminated the connection. Well, Commander Volkov said after a moment, that went about as expected. Torres nodded. Begin deployment. I want our ships in standard liberation formation. Alert all ground forces to prepare for planetary assault. You think they'll actually leave? Nakamura asked. Not a chance in hell, Torres replied. But now they can't say we didn't warn them. Arrogant fleshbags! Admiral Zixvan slammed his armored fist against the tactical display, cracking the hardened glass. Do they have any idea who they're dealing with? Captain Loris approached cautiously. Sir, perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. The human force significantly outnumbers our current deployment. Withdraw? Zix Von whirled on her, all four eyes blazing.
The Krathvar do not retreat, especially not from soft-skinned mammals who think their metal ships make them our equals. Of course not, sir. Loris backpedaled quickly.
I merely suggested. I know what you suggested, Captain. Zix Von cut her off. And such cowardice is beneath an officer of the Dominion. He turned to Lieutenant Krav. Signal the fleet. All vessels to battle stations. And contact the surface. Tell Director Moxthal to accelerate the final phase of the project. If the humans want to play savior, let them try to save a planet of monsters. Lieutenant Krav hesitated. Sir, the test subjects aren't stable yet. Director Moxthal reported that full genomic integration requires at least another solar cycle. Then he should work faster, Zix Von snapped. If we can't hold this planet, we'll make sure the humans regret taking it from us. Deep beneath the surface of Helvoria Prime, in a facility carved into the living rock of the planet's largest continent, Director Moxthal received the Admiral's orders with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The chief scientist of the Krathvar Dominion's Biological Weapons Division looked over the rows of transparent pods lining the walls of the cavernous laboratory. Each contained a Helvorian, man, woman, or child, floating in a nutrient solution, bodies twisted and changed by the genetic modifications being forced upon them. Accelerate the process, he murmured to himself, six-fingered hands dancing across the control panel. Fascinating. His assistant, a younger Krathvar named Vkr'lak, approached nervously. Director, is that wise? The integration protocols require precise timing. Rushing could lead to catastrophic cellular breakdown. It could also lead to breakthrough, Moxthal replied, mandibles forming the Krathvar equivalent of a smile. Science advances through risk, Vkr'lak. Besides, our esteemed Admiral has given us no choice. The humans are coming. The humans, Vkr'lak repeated, a tremor in his voice. The Seventh Fleet. Moxthal glanced at his assistant. Don't tell me you believe those ridiculous stories. The Reapers. Such primitive mythologizing. They destroyed the entire Zithkri battle fleet at Proxima 4, Vkr'lak said. Over 300 ships, gone in less than 6 hours. The Zithkri are invertebrates, both literally and figuratively, Moxthal dismissed. We are Krathvar. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. He turned back to the control panel and began inputting commands. Throughout the vast chamber, the fluid in the pods began to change color, shifting from clear to a sickly greenish hue. The Helvorians inside twitched and convulsed as the accelerated genetic modifications took hold. Begin the awakening sequence, Moxthal ordered. Let's see what our new weapons can do. The first indication that something was very wrong came when the Krathvar fleet began to pull back from Helvoria's orbit, withdrawing to the far side of the planet's largest moon. They're retreating? Commander Volkov asked, watching the tactical display with suspicion. That doesn't seem like the Krathvar. No, Torres agreed. It doesn't. She turned to Lieutenant Nakamura. Any communications from the surface? Nothing on standard frequencies, Captain, Nakamura replied. Wait, I'm picking up something strange on the emergency bands. I'm not sure what it is. Put it through, Torres ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life, filling the air with a sound that made everyone's skin crawl. It wasn't quite screaming, wasn't quite speech. Something in between, a chorus of voices howling in agony and rage. What the hell is that? Volkov whispered. Before anyone could answer, the tactical officer, Lieutenant Harper, called out. Captain, we've got multiple heat signatures launching from the surface. Hundreds of them. Krathvar ships? Torres asked, moving quickly to Harper's station. Negative, Harper replied, frowning at her display. I don't know what they are. Organic signatures, but moving too fast for normal life forms. And the radiation readings are off the charts. Torres stared at the screen, watching as swarms of unidentified objects rose from Helvoria's surface. Get me Admiral Okonkwo, now! Fleet Admiral Imani Okonkwo's expression grew grimmer with each new piece of information. Biological weapons, she said finally. It has to be. Intelligence suggested they were experimenting on the Helvorians, but this... She shook her head. This is genocide. What are your orders, Admiral? Torres asked, keeping her voice steady despite the horror churning in her gut. Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was like steel. The Helvorian government in exile has been consulted. They've made the hardest decision any leadership can face. Torres felt a cold weight settle in her chest. Scorched earth. Okonkwo nodded once. Planetary containment protocols are now in effect. Nothing leaves that atmosphere, Captain. Nothing. If those things are what we think they are, Helvorians forcibly mutated into living weapons, then we cannot allow them to spread. And the surviving population? Torres asked, already knowing the answer. Initial scans suggest the contamination is widespread, Okonkwo replied, her voice professionally detached, though Torres could see the pain in her eyes. The Helvorian leadership believes that mercy may be the only gift we can offer their people now. The bridge was silent, the weight of what was being authorized settling over everyone present. Captain, Okonkwo said quietly, I understand if you wish to formally protest this order. Torres straightened her shoulders. No, Admiral, the 7th Fleet will carry out its duty. She paused. But we're going to make damn sure the Krathvar don't escape. They started this. They don't get to walk away from it. Agreed, Okonkwo said grimly. Execute Operation Mercy Shield, Captain, and may whatever gods exist forgive us. What do you mean, containment protocols? Admiral Zixvan roared. The weapons are working perfectly. The humans are in disarray. Captain Loris's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, our sensors indicate the human fleet is deploying in a full orbital blockade pattern. They're not retreating. They're sealing the planet. And our test subjects? The modified Helvorians have engaged with the first wave of human dropships, Loris reported. Initial combat effectiveness exceeds predictions. However, she hesitated. However what? Zixvan demanded. They're not following control protocols, sir. Director Moxthal reports that the acceleration of the final phase has resulted in unexpected psychological effects. The subjects are attacking indiscriminately, Krathvar forces included. Zixvan waved dismissively. Acceptable losses. Once the humans are dealt with, we can always re-establish control. He moved to the tactical display. What about our fleet? Are we in position to break through the human blockade if necessary? Lieutenant Krav looked up from his station, his carapace pale. Sir, the humans are deploying planetary pacification platforms. The bridge fell silent. Planetary pacification platforms, or P3s as they were commonly known, were the most terrifying weapons in humanity's arsenal. Developed after the Centauri conflict, each platform was capable of sterilizing 1/4 of a planet's surface through a combination of kinetic bombardment and specialized radiation. They wouldn't dare, Zixvan whispered. Even humans aren't that barbaric. Sir, Loris said quietly. The first platform has just activated its targeting sequence. P3 platforms in final deployment positions, Lieutenant Harper reported. Targeting solutions locked. Awaiting your command, Captain. Torres stared at the tactical display, at the beautiful blue-green world that was about to become a cemetery. Status of Krathvar fleet. Still holding position behind Helvoria's moon. Commander Volkov replied. They seem to be waiting to see what we'll do. And the surface? Lieutenant Nakamura cleared his throat. The modified Helvorians have overrun 3 major population centers. They're spreading rapidly, and sir, the unmodified civilians are fighting back. They're being slaughtered. Torres closed her eyes briefly. Come, patch me through to Admiral Zixvan. One last time. Nakamura nodded, fingers flying over his console. A moment later, the Krathvar Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. Captain Torres, Zixvan said, his voice artificially calm. Have you come to surrender? Torres almost laughed at the absurdity. No, Admiral, I've come to offer you a choice. A choice? Zixvan's eye stalks twitched with interest. Option 1. You and your entire fleet surrender immediately. You will be tried for crimes against sentience, and your leadership will likely spend the rest of their natural lives in maximum security containment. And option 2, I presume, involves our glorious deaths in battle? Zixvan asked sarcastically. No, Torres replied coldly. Option 2 is that you watch. She nodded to Nakamura, who split the screen, half showing Zixvan, half showing a live feed from the planet's surface. The scene was nightmarish. Transformed Helvorians, their bodies twisted into grotesque new forms, rampaging through the streets of what had once been a beautiful city. Some flew on mutated wings, others bounded on powerful hind legs. All were killing indiscriminately. Krathvar soldiers, untransformed Helvorians, even each other. This is what you've created, Torres said quietly. And this is what we're about to destroy. I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to know that every death, every life extinguished today, is because of you. Zixvan's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. You're bluffing. Even humans wouldn't destroy an entire planet. To stop what you've unleashed? To prevent it from spreading to other worlds? Torres leaned closer to the screen. Watch us. She cut the connection and turned to Lieutenant Harper.
Execute firing sequence.
From orbit, it began with light. 4 brilliant flashes as the P-3 platforms unleashed their primary payloads. Massive tungsten rods, accelerated to near-relativistic speeds, struck Helvoria's surface with the force of nuclear weapons. The kinetic impacts alone would have been devastating, but they were merely the delivery system for what came next. Specialized radiation bloomed from each impact site, designed to target and destroy specific genetic markers. In this case, both the natural Helvorian genome and the twisted modifications the Krathvar had forced upon them. It was a clean death, if such a thing existed. Cellular breakdown at an accelerated rate. Painless unconsciousness followed swiftly by total organic failure. Within an hour, 90% of all life on Helvoria Prime ceased to exist. The Krathvar watched from behind the moon, stunned into silence by the methodical destruction of an entire world. When it was over, when the radiation had run its course and the planet below was nothing but a sterile husk, Admiral Zixvan received another transmission from the Relentless. "You see now what we're capable of," Captain Torres said, her face ashen but her voice steady. "This is what you forced us to do. Remember that, Admiral. Remember that the Krathvar Dominion isn't the apex predator of this galaxy. We are." The transmission ended, and in its place appeared a simple text message: "Surrender or follow." Admiral Zixvan, conqueror of 17 star systems and the most decorated military commander in Krathvar history, looked at the dead world on his view screen. Then he looked at his officers, saw the fear in their postures. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "Stand down all weapons. Prepare to surrender." 2 days later, in the officers' mess of the Relentless, Captain Torres sat alone, staring at a glass of whiskey she hadn't touched. The room was empty, by design or coincidence she wasn't sure. Perhaps her crew sensed she needed space. The sound of the door opening broke her reverie. Commander Volkov entered, his own face haggard with exhaustion and grief. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. Torres gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Free galaxy." Volkov sat heavily, placing his own untouched glass on the table. "The Krathvar prisoners have been transferred to the holding ships. We'll rendezvous with the prison transport at Arcturus Station in 3 days. Torres nodded absently.
"And Admiral Zixvan?" "In solitary. Hasn't said a word since his surrender." "Good." They sat in silence for a long moment.
"It was the right call," Volkov said finally. "You know that, right? If those things had gotten off-world—" "I know," Torres cut him off. "I know it was the right call. The only call." She finally picked up her glass, staring at the amber liquid.
"Doesn't make it any easier to live with."
"No," Volkov agreed. "It doesn't." Lieutenant Nakamura appeared in the doorway, hesitating when he saw the 2 officers.
"Captain, sorry to interrupt, but there's a transmission coming in from Helvorian High Command. What's left of it, anyway. They're requesting to speak with you personally."
Torres sighed, putting down her still full glass. "Put it through to my quarters. I'll be right there." After Nakamura left, Torres stood, straightening her uniform. "What do you say to people after you've sterilized their homeworld?" she asked quietly. "Even if it was the only way to save the rest of them?" Volkov looked up at her, his eyes tired but clear. "You tell them the truth. That it was a choice between unimaginable horror and unimaginable loss. That sometimes, in this vast, dangerous universe, the best we can do is choose the path that leaves room for a future, even if that future has to be built from ashes." Torres nodded slowly. "That's surprisingly poetic for a grumpy Russian." A ghost of a smile crossed Volkov's face. "We Russians understand tragedy better than most."
"I suppose you do,"
Torres replied. She straightened her shoulders. "Wish me luck." "You don't need luck, Captain," Volkov said as she turned to leave. "You just need to remember why we did it. Why the 7th Fleet exists at all." Torres paused at the door.
"And why is that, Commander?" "To make sure that when someone screams into the darkness, someone answers." 1 month later, Admiral Zixvan found himself in a sterile white room, seated across from a human he didn't recognize.
Not military. This one wore civilian clothes, with no insignia of rank or unit.
"My name is Dr. Elijah Kumar," the human said.
"I'm with the Xenopsychology Division of the Galactic Council." Zixvan said nothing. He hadn't spoken since giving the surrender order. What was there to say?
"I'm here to evaluate your mental state," Dr. Kumar continued, seemingly unperturbed by the silence.
"And to try to understand." "Understand what?" Zixvan asked, his voice rough from disuse. Dr. Kumar looked mildly surprised that the Admiral had spoken. Why the Krathvar Dominion thought it was acceptable to experiment on sentient beings. Why you believe that turning an entire species into living weapons was justified. Zixvan's mandibles clicked once.
You wouldn't understand. Humans with your morality. He made the word sound like a disease. Try me, Kumar said, leaning forward. I've spent my career studying non-human psychology. I've learned that most actions, even ones that seem monstrous to other species, have an internal logic. Zixvan stared at the human for a long moment.
The strong survive. The weak serve or perish. This is the way of the universe. The only truth that matters. The Helvorians were weak. We sought to make them useful. By torturing them? By twisting their very genetic code? By improving them, Zixvan corrected. They were small, fragile creatures. We would have made them powerful. Without their consent. Consent, Zixvan scoffed. Another human concept with no basis in reality. Does a predator seek consent from its prey? Does a storm ask permission before it destroys? Dr. Kumar studied the Krathvar thoughtfully.
And yet, when faced with a stronger predator, with the 7th Fleet, you surrendered rather than die fighting. Curious behavior for one who believes so firmly in the rule of the strong. Zixvan's eye stalks pulled back sharply.
You think I fear death? I surrendered because I wished to understand. Understand what? How a species so soft, so concerned with concepts like mercy and rights and consent could do what you did to Helvoria Prime. Zixvan leaned forward. You destroyed an entire world without hesitation. You committed genocide more efficiently than any Krathvar fleet ever has. And yet you sit in judgment of us? Dr. Kumar was silent for a moment. The difference, Admiral Zixvan, is that we didn't want to do it. Every human involved in that decision carries the weight of it. They will for the rest of their lives. He paused. And we didn't do it to conquer or to prove our strength. We did it to prevent greater suffering, to stop what you started from spreading across the galaxy.
A noble justification,
Zixvan said mockingly. But the result is the same. A dead world and billions of extinguished lives. Perhaps humans and Krathvar are not so different after all. Perhaps not, Kumar agreed, surprising the Admiral. We're both capable of terrible destruction. The difference is in why we use that capability, and how we live with the consequences. He stood. Thank you for speaking with me, Admiral. I believe I have what I need for my preliminary evaluation. As he turned to leave, Zixvan called after him. Tell me, Doctor, what will become of me? Public execution? Life imprisonment? Kumar paused at the door. That's for the tribunal to decide. But if it were up to me, I'd make you help rebuild what you destroyed. Not Helvoria Prime. That's beyond saving. But the Helvorian people. The survivors from their colonies. I'd have you work alongside them. Learn their names, their customs, their hopes. I'd have you face, every day, the consequences of what you believed was your right as the strong. A fate worse than death, Zixvan said bitterly. No, Kumar replied. A chance at redemption. Something your philosophy doesn't account for but which humans consider essential. He smiled slightly. Food for thought, Admiral. 5 years later, on a small moon orbiting a gas giant in the Helvorian system, a ceremony was taking place. A memorial, simple but elegant, was being dedicated to the billions lost when Helvoria Prime was sterilized. Captain, now Admiral, Olivia Torres stood among the assembled dignitaries, watching as the Helvorian president unveiled the monument, a sphere of polished black stone, representing their lost homeworld, cradled in hands carved from the native white granite of their new home. We gather today not only to remember what was lost, President Talia Knox said, her voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd, but to celebrate what was saved. Our species endures because of difficult choices made in our darkest hour. We have not forgotten Helvoria Prime, nor will we ever forget, but neither will we be defined solely by its loss. Torres felt a presence beside her and turned to find Commander, now Captain, Volkov standing at her side. Nice speech, he said quietly. Yes, Torres agreed. She has a gift for finding hope in tragedy. A useful skill these days. Volkov nodded toward a figure standing apart from the main crowd. A Krathvar, his once golden armor replaced by simple civilian clothes, his posture subdued. I'm still not sure how I feel about him being here. Torres followed his gaze to the former Admiral Zixvan. The Helvorians invited him, part of their reconciliation process, apparently. Reconciliation, Volkov said skeptically.
After what he did? After what we all did, Torres corrected gently. The Helvorians have chosen a different path than vengeance. Who are we to question it? They fell silent as President Knox continued her speech, outlining plans for the future, a new homeworld, new alliances, new possibilities.
When the ceremony concluded, Torres found herself approached by Zix Van himself. The former admiral looked aged beyond his years, his once gleaming exoskeleton now dull, his movements hesitant. "Admiral Torres," he said, inclining his head in a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable years before. "Former Admiral Zix Van," she replied, keeping her voice neutral. "I admit, I'm surprised to see you here." "No more surprised than I am to be here," he said. "The Helvorians. They asked me to help with the agricultural adaptations for their new settlement." Torres studied him carefully. "And how do you find your new role?" Zix Van was quiet for a moment. Challenging, humbling. His mandibles clicked softly. "Necessary." Before Torres could respond, a small Helvorian child ran up to Zix Van, tugging at his arm. "Teacher Zix! Teacher Zix! Mom says it's time for the planting ceremony. You promised to show me how to use the soil analyzer." The child's eyes, large, luminous, and the characteristic silver of Helvorians, showed no fear of the once feared conqueror. Torres couldn't hide her surprise at the interaction, a fact that Zix Van noted with what might have been embarrassment.
"Mikal is one of my students," he explained, resting one clawed hand gently on the child's shoulder.
"I teach xenobiology and agricultural science at the new academy." "He knows all about dirt," the child exclaimed with the misplaced enthusiasm only the very young can muster for such topics. "And how to make things grow even when they don't want to."
"That's quite a skill," Torres replied, finding herself at a rare loss for words.
Zix Van bent down, a posture of submission and accessibility that would have been unthinkable for a Krathvar military officer. "Mikal, this is Admiral Torres. She commands the human fleet that—" He paused, clearly searching for appropriate words. "That helped save your people," Torres finished for him, crouching to meet the child at eye level. Mikal stared at her with unabashed curiosity. "Mom says you had to destroy our old home because bad things were happening. She says sometimes you have to burn away the diseased parts to save the whole forest." Torres felt her throat tighten. "Your mom sounds very wise."
"She's a xenobotanist," Mikal said proudly, stumbling slightly over the technical term.
"She works with Teacher Zix on the new food plants." He tugged insistently at Zix Van's arm again. "Come on! Everyone's waiting!" "You should go," Torres said, straightening up.
"Wouldn't want to keep your students waiting."
Zix Van hesitated. "Admiral, before I go, there's something I've wanted to say to you for years." His 4 eyes focused intently on her face. "I understand now what Dr. Kumar tried to explain to me about the difference between our species. It's not that humans are incapable of brutality. Your actions at Helvoria Prime proved otherwise. The difference," he continued, mandibles moving delicately as he chose his words with care, "is that you never wanted the power you wield. You carry it as a burden, not a right. When the Krathvar encountered weakness, we exploited it because we could. When humans encounter weakness, you shield it, even when that protection requires terrible acts." Torres remained silent, the weight of his words settling uncomfortably on her shoulders. "I thought it made you soft," Zix Van admitted. "Now I know it makes you the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Because you'll do anything. Destroy worlds, annihilate civilizations, even sacrifice yourselves. Not for conquest or glory, but to protect others." He lowered his head slightly. "The Krathvar feared nothing because we understood nothing. You understand everything, and you fear it all, yet you act anyway." Mikal tugged at his arm again with childish impatience, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "I have to go," Zix Van said, "but I wanted you to know. I finally understand why they call you the Reapers. It's not because you bring death. It's because you decide what must be harvested and what must be preserved." He inclined his head in a formal gesture of respect. "Thank you, Admiral Torres, for making the choice we never could." With that, he allowed himself to be pulled away by the excited child, leaving Torres standing alone by the monument, the black stone of the lost world gleaming in the sunlight of their new one. Volkov materialized at her side, having kept a respectful distance during the exchange.
"Well, that was unexpected." "The entire day has been unexpected," Torres replied, watching as Zix Van joined a group of Helvorians across the plaza. "Did you ever imagine this, Dmitri? When we gave the order to deploy the P3s?" He shook his head.
Not in a million years. President Knox approached them, her silver eyes bright with a complex mix of emotions that Torres couldn't begin to decipher. "Admiral Torres, Captain Volkov," she greeted them. "I hope the ceremony wasn't too difficult for you." "It was beautiful," Torres assured her. "Though I'm not sure we deserve to be here." Knox's expression softened. "If anyone deserves to be here, it's you. The 7th Fleet. The ones who answered when we called." She followed Torres's gaze to where Zix Van was demonstrating something to a group of children, his clawed hands moving with surprising gentleness. "Ah, I see you've noticed our most controversial resident." "I didn't expect to see him here," Torres admitted. "Working with children, no less." "Redemption takes many forms," Knox said. "For the former admiral, teaching the next generation has proven transformative. The children don't see the monster who ordered atrocities. They just see Teacher Zix, who knows fascinating things about plants and soil chemistry." "And you're comfortable with that?" Volkov asked, his skepticism evident. Knox considered the question seriously. "Comfortable? No, but necessary? Yes." She turned to face them fully. "When we lost our homeworld, we had a choice to make. We could define ourselves by that loss, become a people frozen in our grief and rage, or we could define ourselves by what we built from the ashes. The Krathvar wanted to remake us in their image, to turn us into weapons," she continued. "We refused that fate. But we also refused to become weapons of another kind, instruments of endless vengeance." She gestured toward the ceremony taking place across the square, where Helvorian and human children were planting seedlings together, guided by teachers of both species, and one former Krathvar admiral. "This is our answer to what was done to us," Knox said simply. "To grow something new." A soft chime sounded, and Knox checked her communications device. "Ah, I'm needed for the final blessing. Would you both join us? It would mean a great deal to have the 7th Fleet represented." Volkov looked to Torres, who nodded after only a brief hesitation. "We'd be honored," she told the president. As they crossed the plaza, moving toward the gathered crowd, Torres felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a lightening of the burden she'd carried since giving the order that destroyed Helvoria Prime. Not absolution exactly. The weight of billions of lives wasn't something that could ever be fully lifted, but perhaps balance, a sense that from that terrible necessity, something hopeful had emerged. The planting ceremony was simple but profound. Children of various species, mostly Helvorian, but with a scattering of humans and other allies. Each placed a seedling into prepared soil. As they did so, they spoke the name of someone lost when the old world died. A grandparent, a friend, a teacher, a memory preserved as new life took root. When it came time for Mikhal's turn, the young Helvorian stepped forward confidently, cradling his seedling, a rare variety of Helvorian flowering tree that had nearly been lost with the homeworld. Zixvan stood nearby, his posture both protective and deferential as the child worked. "I plant this for my father, Torin," Mikhal said clearly, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "Who stayed behind to help others escape. Mom says he's part of the old world now, but he'd be happy to be part of the new one too." Torres felt Volkov stiffen beside her, and she knew they were thinking the same thing. The evacuation ships that had managed to leave before the P3 platforms were deployed. The desperate few who had escaped while others sacrificed themselves to buy time. The missions that the 7th Fleet had protected at all costs, even as they prepared to sterilize the world below. After Mikhal, other children took their turns. The ceremony continued until the final seedling was planted by President Knox herself. "For all those unnamed and uncounted," she said solemnly. "Those whose stories we may never know, but whose legacy lives on in each of us. May this new forest grow strong on the foundation of their memory." As the formal ceremony concluded, Torres found herself standing somewhat apart from the crowd, watching as people began to mingle and talk. The atmosphere had shifted from solemn remembrance to something more like cautious celebration, not of what had happened, but of what might yet be. "Penny for your thoughts, Admiral?" said a familiar voice. Torres turned to find Fleet Admiral Imani Okonkwo standing behind her, now wearing the formal white uniform of the diplomatic corps, rather than the tactical black of Fleet Command. "Admiral Okonkwo," Torres said, automatically straightening her posture. "I didn't know you were attending." "Last-minute decision," Okonkwo replied with a small smile. "Some things you need to see in person." She nodded toward the newly planted garden.
"Impressive, isn't it? 5 years ago, we were making the hardest call of our careers. Now this." "It doesn't erase what happened," Torres said quietly. "No," Okonkwo agreed. "Nothing ever could, but it gives it context. She studied Torres thoughtfully.
Still having the dreams? Torres glanced at her sharply. How did you— Because I have them too, Okonkwo said simply. Everyone involved in that decision does. The faces we never saw, the voices we never heard, the lives we ended with a command.
Does it get easier? Torres asked before she could stop herself. Okonkwo's expression was gentle but uncompromising.
No, and it shouldn't. The day it gets easier is the day we become what the Krathvar were, creatures who destroy without counting the cost. She nodded towards Zix-Van, who was helping a group of children water their newly planted seedlings. Even they can learn to count the cost, it seems. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the activity around the memorial garden.
The Security Council is creating a new task force, Okonkwo said finally. Something different from the usual fleet deployments. Less, kick down the door and shoot everything that moves. More, figure out why the door needs kicking in the first place. Torres raised an eyebrow.
Sounds suspiciously like diplomacy, Admiral. More like prevention, Okonkwo corrected. Finding the Helvorias of the galaxy before they become, well, before they need the 7th Fleet's particular brand of intervention. And you're telling me this because— Because I've recommended you to lead it, Okonkwo said. You've seen the worst that can happen when we're too late. I think that makes you uniquely qualified to make sure we're early next time. Torres stared at her in disbelief. You want to promote me out of active fleet command, after everything the 7th has accomplished? I want to promote you to something more important, Okonkwo replied. The 7th Fleet will always be there when we need the big guns, but what if we created something that meant we didn't need them quite so often?
Before Torres could respond, Mikal came running up to them, his silver eyes wide with excitement.
Admiral Torres, Teacher Zix says you command the biggest ships in the whole galaxy. Is that true? Can I see them someday? Do they really have cannons that can punch holes in planets? My friend Alana says they do, but I think she's making stuff up because how would a ship even carry a cannon that big and— Whoa there, Torres laughed, kneeling down to the child's level. That's a lot of questions, buddy. McCall took a deep breath, visibly trying to contain his enthusiasm. Sorry, Mom says I ask too many questions sometimes. No such thing as too many questions, Torres assured him. That's how we learn. She considered how to answer him. My ships are pretty big, yes, but they're not designed to punch holes in planets. They're designed to protect people who need protecting. Like us? Mikkel asked, his head tilted curiously.
Torres felt a lump form in her throat. Yes, like you.
Mikal seemed to consider this deeply, with the serious concentration only children can muster. Teacher Zix says you had to do a very hard thing to save everyone else. He says sometimes protectors have to make sacrifices. Torres shot a surprised glance toward Zix-Van, who was watching the interaction from a respectful distance. Teacher Zix is right, she said carefully. Sometimes protecting others means doing things you wish you didn't have to do. McCall nodded sagely, as if this confirmed some private theory. That's what heroes do, though, right? That's what my dad did, too. Before Torres could formulate a response to that, McCall had another thought. If your ships protect people, does that mean you could come back and visit us again, to make sure we're still safe? Torres glanced up at Okonkwo, who gave her the slightest of nods. Actually, Torres said, I think I might be coming back quite often. Would that be okay with you? Mikal's face lit up.
Yes, and you can see how big our trees get. Teacher Zix says they'll grow as tall as buildings someday, but that'll take hundreds of years. So I'll be really old, but you'll be really old too. So maybe we can both see them together when they're medium-sized at least. And a Helvorian woman approached, placing a gentle hand on Mikal's shoulder. I see you've been making new friends, she said with a fond smile. I hope he hasn't been bothering you, Admiral. Not at all, Torres assured her. I've been enjoying his questions. I'm Lyra, the woman introduced herself. Mikal's mother, and Teacher Zix's research partner for my sins. This last was said with a wry smile in the direction of the former admiral, who had approached with uncharacteristic hesitancy. Admiral Okonkwo, Zix-Van acknowledged formally. I didn't realize you were attending. Last-minute decision, Okonkwo replied neutrally. An awkward silence threatened to descend, broken by Mikal's complete inability to read the room. Mom, Admiral Torres says she's going to visit us a lot. She can see our trees grow. And maybe we can visit her ship someday too, please? Lyra laughed, a sound of genuine warmth that seemed to dispel some of the tension. We'll see, little one. Right now, it's time for the feast. Why don't you go find your friends? I'll be along shortly. Mikal looked like he might protest,
but a stern look from his mother sent him scampering off toward the other children.
He's remarkable, Torres said honestly. After everything that's happened, children are resilient, Lyra replied.
More so than adults sometimes. They don't carry the same weight of before and after. Her expression grew more serious, though he still has nightmares about the evacuation, about his father. Torres nodded, understanding all too well. The dreams don't stop, but they change eventually. Yes, Lyra agreed. They do. She glanced between the three leaders, 2 human admirals and a former Krathvar commander, with a hint of amusement. What a strange gathering this is. If someone had told me 5 years ago that we'd all be standing here.
Life takes unexpected turns, Okonkwo said diplomatically.
Indeed it does, Zixvan agreed, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Perhaps I should join the children. The soil analysis demonstration. We'll wait 5 minutes, Lyra interrupted firmly.
She fixed him with a pointed look. There's something that needs to be said, and you've been avoiding it for years. Zixvan's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a sign of distress.
Lyra, this isn't the time or place. It's exactly the time and place, she insisted.
When else will you have both admirals together? She turned to Torres and Okonkwo. He has something to tell you, something important. Zixvan's posture shifted, his usual confidence completely absent. For the first time, Torres could see past the fearsome Krathvar exterior to the troubled individual beneath. During my work with the Helvorian survivors, he began haltingly, I discovered something that was classified at the highest levels of the Dominion command. Both admirals tensed, years of military training instantly putting them on alert. The experiments on Helvoria Prime, Zixvan continued, his voice dropping to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. They weren't isolated. They were part of a larger program, one that's still active. Where? Okonkwo demanded, all diplomatic pretense evaporating.
I don't know exact locations, Zixvan admitted.
But I know the program codename, Project Genesis, and I know it involves at least 3 other occupied worlds. Torres and Okonkwo exchanged grim looks.
How do you know this? Torres asked.
And why tell us now? Zixvan's mandibles clicked nervously.
The Krathvar keep genetic records of all species we encounter. As I've been working to help the Helvorians adapt crops to their new home, I needed access to their original genetic baselines. The database contained cross-references to other species I didn't recognize. He looked directly at Torres. Species that had the same modification markers that were being tested on the Helvorians. Why are you telling us this? Okonkwo asked, her voice carefully controlled. 5 years ago, you were ready to turn an entire species into living weapons for the Dominion. Zixvan's eyes shifted to Lyra, who stood beside him with quiet strength. Because 5 years ago, I didn't understand the cost. His voice dropped further, and because there are children on those worlds too. The simple statement hung in the air between them. Lyra spoke into the silence. He's been trying to find a way to contact Earth authorities for months. When we heard you were coming for the memorial. She shrugged. It seemed like fate. Torres studied the unlikely pair, the Helvorian scientist and the former Krathvar admiral. You've been working together on this? We've been working together on many things, Lyra replied with dignity, including how to right past wrongs. Okonkwo's analytical mind was already several steps ahead. Do you have data, coordinates, anything concrete we can use? Some, Zixvan acknowledged. Not enough, but I know how to get more. How? Torres asked. By going back, he said simply. By returning to Krathvar space. That's suicide, Torres protested. You'd be executed as a traitor the moment you crossed the border. Not if I had the right cover, Zixvan countered. Not if I appeared to be a prisoner being returned in a diplomatic exchange, one who had valuable intelligence on human fleet movements. The admirals exchanged stunned looks as they realized what he was proposing. You want us to help you fake a prisoner exchange, Okonkwo said flatly, so you can spy on your own people. To save innocent lives, Zixvan corrected. To prevent another Helvoria Prime. It would never work, Torres argued. The Dominion would never believe we'd just hand you back. They would if it was part of a larger negotiation, Zixvan insisted. There are disputed territories in the Cygnus Reach, resources both sides want. The Dominion has been seeking a diplomatic opening for years. And you know this how? Okonkwo asked skeptically. Lyra answered. Because I've been helping him monitor Krathvar communications. My late husband was a signal intelligence specialist. He left behind Tools. The implications of what they were suggesting began to sink in.
A covert operation, using a former enemy as a double agent, potentially preventing atrocities before they required planetary-scale intervention.
It was precisely the kind of mission Okonkwo had just been describing. This would need Security Council approval, Okonkwo said slowly. Multiple agency coordination, extensive planning. And it would be incredibly dangerous, Torres added, looking directly at Zix Van. For you, especially. Why risk it? You've built a life here. You're actually doing good work. The admirals exchanged stunned looks as they realized what he was proposing. You want us to help you fake a prisoner exchange, Okonkwo said flatly.
So you can spy on your own people. To save innocent lives, Zix Van corrected.
To prevent another Helvoria Prime. It would never work, Torres argued. The Dominion would never believe we'd just hand you back.
They would if it was part of a larger negotiation, Zix Van insisted.
There are disputed territories in the Cygnus Reach, resources both sides want. The Dominion has been seeking a diplomatic opening for years. And you know this how? Okonkwo asked skeptically. Lyra answered. Because I've been helping him monitor Krathvar communications. My late husband was a signal intelligence specialist. He left behind tools. The implications of what they were suggesting began to sink in. A covert operation, using a former enemy as a double agent, potentially preventing atrocities before they required planetary-scale intervention. It was precisely the kind of mission Okonkwo had just been describing. This would need Security Council approval, Okonkwo said slowly.
Multiple agency coordination, extensive planning. And it would be incredibly dangerous, Torres added, looking directly at Zix Van.
For you especially. Why risk it? You've built a life here. You're actually doing good work. Zix Van's mandibles clicked softly as he formulated his answer. For 5 years, I've lived with the knowledge of what I participated in. 5 years watching these people I helped destroy, rebuild their lives. 5 years of Mikhail's questions about the universe and his father's sacrifice. His 4 eyes focused intently on the 2 human admirals.
You destroyed a world to save a species. I think I can risk 1 life to save worlds.
Lyra placed a hand on his armored forearm. Not alone, she said quietly. I have contacts among the surviving Helvorian intelligence community. We've been building a network, preparing. We just needed a way in. And a way out, if things go wrong, Torres pointed out. The 7th Fleet, Zix Van said with something like reverence. The ones who come when no one else will. Torres felt a familiar weight settling onto her shoulders. The responsibility of command, of lives depending on her decisions. But this time it came with something else. Something that felt almost like hope. We should discuss this somewhere more private, Okonkwo said, glancing around at the celebration continuing around them. And with proper security protocols. Agreed, Torres said. But first... She looked toward where Mikhail and the other children were playing near the newly planted memorial garden.
Zix Van, you have soil samples to analyze, I believe? The former admiral straightened, understanding her meaning immediately.
Indeed, duty calls. He hesitated. You'll consider it? Truly? We'll do more than consider it, Okonkwo promised. Now go be Teacher Zix for a little while longer. The rest can wait until tomorrow. As Zix Van rejoined the children, Lyra lingered a moment longer.
He meant what he said, you know, about understanding now, about the difference between your species and his. And what do you think the difference is? Torres asked.
Lyra's silver eyes were knowing and ancient despite her youth. The Krathvar conquer because they can. Humans sacrifice because they must. She smiled faintly. He's learning to be more human every day. As she walked away to join the festivities, Torres turned to Okonkwo.
That task force you mentioned, the Prevention Initiative. Okonkwo nodded.
I think I'd like to hear more about it, Torres said thoughtfully. Okonkwo smiled. I thought you might. 6 months later, in the cold darkness of space at the edge of Krathvar territory, a small diplomatic vessel prepared to dock with a Dominion cruiser. On the bridge of the human ship, Admiral Olivia Torres stood in her formal whites, watching the final approach. Signal from the Krathvar ship, Lieutenant Nakamura reported. They're ready to receive the prisoner and the diplomatic packet. Torres nodded. Tell them we're ready to proceed as arranged. The door to the bridge slid open, and 2 security officers escorted Zix Van onto the command deck. The former admiral was in restraints, his once polished exoskeleton now deliberately dulled, his posture carefully crafted to suggest defeat without complete brokenness. In the past months, intelligence specialists had crafted his cover identity with meticulous care, A captured war criminal whose value as an intelligence asset had finally been exhausted, now being traded back to his people in exchange for concessions in the Cygnus Reach.
It's time, Torres said simply. Zixvan inclined his head.
So it is. The emergency protocols have been thoroughly memorized, he assured her. If things go badly, I activate the quantum entanglement transmitter. The 7th Fleet comes to do what it does best. Torres stepped closer, lowering her voice. That's the last resort, not the first option. The goal is intelligence gathering, not another conflict. I understand, Admiral. His mandibles formed what she had learned was a Krathvar smile. I've become quite fond of peace these past years. She reached out, surprising both of them by placing a hand on his armored shoulder. Teacher Zix has students waiting for him to return. Don't forget that. How could I? He replied softly. Mikal made me promise to bring back soil samples from at least 3 different worlds. A signal chimed, indicating the docking was complete. That's your cue, Torres said, stepping back and resuming her formal demeanor. Good luck, Admiral. Former Admiral, he corrected, allowing the security officers to take his arms. Just as you may soon be. Torres raised an eyebrow. The task force isn't official yet. But it will be, Zixvan said with certainty. Because the galaxy needs the 7th Fleet to do more than just arrive when all hope is lost. It needs you to ensure hope is never lost in the first place. As he was led away, Torres returned to the view screen, watching as the airlock cycled, and her unlikeliest ally was handed over to his former comrades, a Trojan horse entering willingly into the fortress. Commander Volkov stepped up beside her. Do you think it will work?
I don't know, Torres admitted.
But I know we have to try. Because that's what humans do? Because that's what people should do, she corrected. Krathvar, Helvorian, human, doesn't matter. We're all just trying to find our way in this vast, dangerous universe.
She thought of Mikal planting a tree for the father he'd lost.
Of Lyra building a new life alongside her people's former enemy. Of Zixvan willingly walking back into danger to prevent another tragedy. They thought no one would come, she said softly, echoing the desperate call that had brought the 7th Fleet to Helvoria Prime years ago. But maybe next time, someone will be there before they even need to call. Volkov nodded in understanding. From Reapers to Preventers, quite the career change. Evolution, Torres corrected with a small smile. Just like Teacher Zix would say. On the view screen, the Krathvar ship began to move away, carrying its precious cargo of hope disguised as defeat. Torres watched until it disappeared into the darkness, then turned to her crew. Set course for Helvorian space, she ordered. We have some tree growth to check on. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the galaxy, humans continued to do what they had always done best. Stepping into the unknown, risking everything. Not because they were fearless, but because they understood exactly what there was to fear. Not because they were warriors born, but because they had learned the true meaning of sacrifice. Not because they were the strongest species, but because they refused to let strength alone determine who survived and who perished. Humanity, fuck yeah, indeed. End. You know what really grinds my gears about humans? Admiral Kazet clicked his mandibles in frustration. They don't even have the decency to lose properly. Commander Vkr'lak's eye stalk swiveled toward his superior. Sir, with all due respect, they've lost 7 consecutive battles. Their orbital defenses are in ruins. Their military infrastructure is crippled. What more could you possibly want? The Admiral's carapace flushed a deep purple of irritation as he gestured at the holographic display showing Earth's final transmission.
I want them to stop sending messages like this. The message, broadcast on all frequencies and translated into the standard galactic language, hung in the air between them. Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be civilized.
What does it even mean?
Kazet chittered.
Is it a threat? A joke? Some bizarre cultural reference? We've conquered 18 species across 12 star systems, and not one of them has ever responded to imminent defeat with whatever this is. Perhaps it's just desperation, Vkr'lak suggested. Their global communications network is still partially functional. This could be some rogue element trying to save face. Admiral Kazet flicked his antenna dismissively. Our intelligence reports indicate the message came directly from their United Earth Defense Council. This was an official, coordinated response. Should we respond to it? Vkr'lak asked hesitantly.
Absolutely not. We continue as planned. Deploy the 9th wave to eliminate their remaining ground defenses. I want boots on the surface within 36 hours.
Yes, Admiral.
General Elena Blackwood surveyed the ruins of what had once been UEDC headquarters in Geneva. The Cravage bombardment had reduced most of the complex to rubble, but the emergency bunker was intact, and that was all that mattered. "Status report!" she barked, not looking up from the tactical display.
Colonel Dmitry Volkov's voice was steady despite the circumstances.
"The message was successfully transmitted on all available channels, General. Our remaining quantum entanglement communicators confirm it reached at least 73% of their fleet." "Good," Blackwood nodded. "And the response?" "Nothing yet. They've continued orbital bombardment of military targets in Asia and North America." "So they've chosen option B," Blackwood said with a grim smile. "Excellent." Volkov shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, General, I still think we should have tried a more conventional approach. A peace offering, or—" "We tried peace offerings 3 weeks ago," Blackwood interrupted.
"We tried surrender terms 2 weeks ago. We tried targeted counterattacks last week. None of it worked. These bugs don't understand how we think, and frankly, we've been playing by their rulebook too long. But Protocol Omega, it's our last resort, yes. But in case you haven't noticed, Colonel," she gestured to the devastation visible on the security feeds, "we've reached last resort territory. The civilian casualties there won't be any civilians left if we don't act," Blackwood said sharply. "The Cravage don't distinguish between military and civilian targets once they establish ground control. We've seen the footage from their previous conquests. But using Project Lazarus, it goes against everything we've been pretending to be," Blackwood corrected. "Humanity has been playing nice for centuries, Colonel. We've been good little galactic citizens. We've followed the rules of war. And where has it gotten us? On the brink of extinction." She tapped a sequence on her command pad, bringing up a new display. "Do you know why we called it Project Lazarus, Colonel?" Volkov swallowed hard. "Because it brings back the dead?" Blackwood's laugh was hollow. "No. Because it brings back what we buried, what we tried to kill in ourselves." She looked up, her eyes hard. "Initiate Protocol Omega. Authorization Blackwood Tango Sierra 9-1. "Yes, General," Volkov said quietly. He moved to the central console and began the activation sequence. Blackwood turned back to the tactical display, watching as new data began to flow in. "Time to remind the galaxy who we really are." Fleet Commander Vkr'lak was reviewing the latest bombardment reports when the alert came through. "Commander!" his sensor officer called, voice pitched high with alarm. "We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface." "What kind of signatures?" Vkr'lak demanded, moving to the sensor station. "Unknown, sir. They don't match any weapons profiles in our database. They're emanating from everywhere." "Everywhere? That's impossible." "No, sir. I mean literally everywhere. We're detecting these energy spikes from every continent, every ocean, even the polar regions." Vkr'lak's mandibles clicked nervously. "Put it on the main display." The holographic projection of Earth appeared, then began to light up with thousands, no millions, of tiny points of light. They pulsed in unison, creating a web-like pattern that encompassed the entire planet. "What in the 7 moons?" Vkr'lak muttered. His communications officer interrupted. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface." On screen. The image shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform, though it was different from the United Earth defense standards they'd observed before. This uniform was black, unmarked except for a single insignia, a stylized phoenix rising from flames. "This is General Elena Blackwood of Earth's Lazarus Protocol," the human said, her voice unnervingly calm. "We warned you." "Warned us?" Vkr'lak couldn't help responding. "Your message was cryptic nonsense." The human's lips curled upward in what their intelligence briefings had identified as a smile, though this version contained none of the warmth the expression supposedly conveyed. "Then allow me to clarify," she said. "For the past 3 centuries, humanity has been restraining itself, playing by galactic rules, acting civilized. That ends today." "Your threats are meaningless," Vkr'lak said. "Your military capabilities are crippled. Your orbital defenses are destroyed. Your defeat is inevitable." "You're absolutely right about one thing," Blackwood replied. "Our military is crippled, if you're talking about the military we've been showing you." A new data feed appeared beside her image, technical specifications and deployment statistics that made no sense to Vkr'lak. "You see, Commander, humanity's history is complicated. We spent millennia trying to kill each other before we finally united. When we did, we made a decision to bury our most dangerous technologies and approaches to warfare, to become civilized by galactic standards. we created the United Earth Defense Council to oversee our military development along acceptable, ethical lines. And? Vkr'lak clicked impatiently. And we created Protocol Omega as insurance. A distributed, hidden network of weapons platforms, research facilities, and personnel dedicated to maintaining and advancing the technologies we officially abandoned. Technologies that even our own citizens don't know exist. As if on cue, the sensor officer called out again. Sir, the energy readings are intensifying. They're interfacing with our system somehow. That's impossible, Vkr'lak snapped. Our security protocols are based on technology we shared with the galactic community. Blackwood interrupted. Technology we deliberately held back from upgrading, because we knew this day might come. Across the command deck, consoles began to flicker and fail. The ship's lights dimmed, then stabilized at half power. What have you done? Vkr'lak demanded, genuine fear creeping into his voice for the first time. We've activated a subspace resonance field that selectively targets your neural networks, both biological and synthetic, Blackwood explained, as if discussing the weather. Right now it's just disrupting your ship's systems, but with a slight adjustment, it could target your central nervous systems instead. That's barbaric. No, Blackwood corrected. It's pragmatic. You left us no choice. Before Vkr'lak could respond, his tactical officer called out in panic. Sir, we're detecting mass teleportation signatures throughout the fleet. Something is boarding our vessels. Lieutenant Marcus Davies materialized in the corridor of a Vkr'lak destroyer, his Lazarus Protocol combat armor whirring softly as its systems synchronized with the neural interface in his brain. The suit was a technological marvel that would have been deemed too aggressive by galactic community standards. A blend of advanced exoskeleton, neural enhancement, and integrated weapon systems that effectively turned its wearer into a walking tank. But the real violation of galactic conventions was the teleportation system itself. Most spacefaring civilizations had abandoned the technology centuries ago after the Telosian incident, where a teleportation accident had wiped out an entire species. Humanity had officially done the same, while secretly perfecting it under Protocol Omega. Lazarus Team Alpha in position, Davies subvocalized, the neural link transmitting his words directly to the command network. No contact yet. Copy Alpha, came the response in his mind. Beta through Echo teams report successful insertion. Primary objectives: secure engine rooms, command bridges, and weapons control. Secondary objective: gather intel. Lethal force authorized, but prisoners are preferred when practical. Understood. Alpha moving out. Davies signaled to his 5-person team, and they moved silently through the alien vessel, their armor's adaptive camouflage blending with the organic metallic walls of the Vkr'lak ship. Their helmet displays highlighted optimal routes and potential threats based on real-time data being gathered by the millions of nanodrones they'd released upon arrival. Contact 30 meters ahead, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Zhang, reported. 4 hostiles, standard security configuration. Davies nodded. Non-lethal takedown. We need intel. The team split into practice formation. Davies and Zhang would approach from the front as a distraction, while the other 3 members circled around through adjacent corridors to flank the Vkr'lak security team. As they rounded the corner, Davies couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction at the mandible-dropping shock on the lead Vkr'lak guard's face. The aliens had clearly never expected to see humans on their ship, much less ones encased in armor that made them look like something out of the sci-fi entertainment vids that had been popular before the invasion. Hello there, Davies said casually, the suit's translator converting his words to the clicking, chittering language of the Vkr'lak. Lovely ship you've got. Mind if we borrow it? The guards raised their weapons, but it was already too late. Targeted electromagnetic pulses from Zhang's armor disabled their firearms before they could fire, and the rest of the team struck from behind with precision stun batons, another uncivilized technology that humanity had officially abandoned, but secretly refined. Within seconds, all 4 guards were unconscious. Bind them and prep for interrogation, Davies ordered. Zhang with me. Let's get to the engine room. As they moved through the ship, encountering and neutralizing resistance along the way, Davies couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a professor of xenolinguistics at Oxford University, with no idea that Protocol Omega even existed. Then the Vkr'lak had attacked without warning, and he'd received the activation code that had been buried in his military discharge papers years earlier. Every Lazarus operative had a cover identity, a normal life they led until called upon. Some were teachers, others engineers, doctors, or artists. All had military backgrounds, carefully selected psychological profiles, and specialized training they received during sabbaticals or extended vacations. It was an elaborate deception, maintained across generations. A hidden army of humanity's most effective warriors, equipped with humanity's most dangerous technologies, waiting for the day when playing by the rules no longer worked. That day had come. Admiral Kezet stared at the reports flooding in with mounting horror. Nearly 40% of the invasion fleet had gone silent in the past hour. The ships that were still responding reported being boarded by humans using impossible technology, teleportation, adaptive armor, weapons that seemed to target Kravaj physiology with terrifying precision. How? He demanded of no one in particular. How could they have hidden this capability? Commander Vkr'lak, who had been coordinating what passed for a defense against this unexpected assault, turned all 4 eye stalks toward the Admiral. Sir, I've been analyzing the data. It appears the humans have been deceiving us, deceiving everyone. Explain, Kezet ordered. When humanity joined the galactic community, they presented themselves as a young, technologically developing species. They accepted our guidance, integrated our standardized technologies, and followed community protocols. But according to what we're seeing now, they were lying through their teeth, Kezet finished. They were far more advanced than they let on. Yes, sir, and not just technologically advanced, tactically sophisticated as well. The boarding parties are operating with incredible efficiency, using strategies we've never encountered before. But why? Why the deception? Before Vkr'lak could answer, the command deck's doors hissed open. Both Kravaj officers turned, expecting to see security personnel. Instead, 5 humans in black armor entered, weapons trained on them. "Hello, Admiral," said the lead human, his helmet retracting to reveal a face with dark skin and a close-cropped beard. "I'm Lieutenant Marcus Davies. I'll be handling your surrender today." "Surrender?" Kezet clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "You may have surprised us, human, but this fleet still has enough firepower to reduce your planet to ash." "Had," Davies corrected. "Past tense. We've taken control of your weapons systems across the fleet. And just to be clear, we didn't come here to negotiate." With a gesture, Davies activated the holographic display in the center of the command deck. It showed hundreds of Kravaj ships, color-coded by status. Over half were now highlighted in human control blue. "But how?" Kezet demanded. "That's a fascinating question," Davies replied, perching casually on the edge of the command console. "One I'll be happy to answer, since you're going to be our guests for the foreseeable future." Back in the bunker beneath Geneva, General Blackwood watched the holographic display with grim satisfaction. Protocol Omega was exceeding even her expectations. Within 3 hours, they had secured control of 82% of the Kravaj fleet. The remaining vessels were either disabled or attempting to retreat. "Message from Lieutenant Davies, General," Colonel Volkov reported. "Admiral Kezet has been secured. They're transferring him to the containment facility in Antarctica now." "Excellent," Blackwood nodded. "And the data retrieval?" "Complete. We've downloaded their entire command network. Our AI systems are analyzing it now, but preliminary findings suggest the Kravaj were operating under orders from the Galactic Security Council." Blackwood's expression hardened. "So our suspicions were correct. This wasn't a rogue action. It was sanctioned." "It appears so. According to the data, we were classified as a potential destabilizing influence after their deep space monitoring detected some of our Lazarus Protocol test sites. They saw a fraction of our capabilities and decided to eliminate us before we could reveal ourselves fully," Blackwood said thoughtfully. "Not entirely irrational from their perspective. Misguided, but not irrational." "What now, General?" Volkov asked. "We've repelled the invasion, but the rest of the galactic community will respond when they learn what happened." "Oh, they'll respond all right," Blackwood smiled. "But not in the way you might think, Lieutenant Davies." The holographic display shifted to show Davies, now on the bridge of what appeared to be the Kravaj flagship. "Ready on your command, General," he reported. "Initiate Phase 2, Blackwood ordered. Let's send our message to the entire galactic community." In the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Security Council on Centauri Prime, representatives from the 23 most powerful species in the known universe were engaged in heated debate about the ongoing Kravaj operation against Earth. "The humans must be completely subdued," insisted Delegate Hezrel of the Futurian Conclave. "Our deep space monitoring detected quantum signatures consistent with prohibited technologies. If they master those sciences, they could pose an existential threat." "I still say this action was premature," countered Delegate Oloro of the Tantaran Republic. "We had no direct evidence of hostile intent. The Kravaj campaign was authorized based on theoretical projections and historical analysis of human behavior pre-unification." The projections were clear, Israel chittered.
Left unchecked, humans would develop into a destabilizing force within 50 standard years. Their psychological profiles indicate a propensity for... The delegates' words were cut off as every screen and holographic display in the chamber suddenly activated simultaneously. The image that appeared caused immediate uproar. A human female in an unfamiliar black uniform, seated in what appeared to be a command center.
"Greetings, esteemed delegates of the Galactic Security Council," the human said.
"I am General Elena Blackwood of Earth. I apologize for interrupting your session, but I believe you've been discussing us, so it seemed only fair that we join the conversation."
"How is this possible?" Israel demanded.
"This chamber is protected by the most advanced security systems in the galaxy." "About those systems," Blackwood said, her tone almost conversational.
"They're quite impressive. Or rather, they would be, if we hadn't designed the quantum entanglement protocols they're based on." Stunned silence fell across the chamber.
"Yes, that's right," Blackwood continued. "When humanity joined the galactic community, we shared certain technologies. Technologies we had developed centuries earlier, but presented as recent innovations. You adopted them eagerly, standardized them, and built your infrastructure around them, never once questioning why we would so freely give away such valuable intellectual property. What is the meaning of this intrusion?" demanded the council chairperson, a Malurian whose gelatinous form pulsed with agitation. "The meaning is simple, chairperson," Blackwood replied. "You authorized an unprovoked attack on my planet based on fears of what we might become. I'm here to inform you that your fears were understated." With a gesture, Blackwood expanded the display to show multiple feeds. Crevage ships under human control, advanced weaponry beyond anything the council had seen before, and the captured Admiral Kazit himself, looking decidedly unhappy in his containment cell.
"The invasion fleet you sent has been neutralized," Blackwood stated matter-of-factly.
"Admiral Kazit and his senior officers are now our guests. We have downloaded their entire command network and are fully aware that this attack was authorized by this council."
"This is an outrage," Israel chittered.
"The Crevage operation was illegal under Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, which prohibits preemptive military action against member worlds without evidence of imminent threat," Blackwood interrupted.
"Yes, we're quite familiar with the charter you assumed we took at face value." She leaned forward, her expression hardening.
"For 3 centuries, humanity has maintained a facade. We have pretended to be less advanced, less capable, and far less dangerous than we truly are. We have followed your rules, accepted your guidance, and integrated peacefully into your community. And how have we been repaid? With betrayal and attempted genocide." Blackwood paused, letting the accusation hang in the air before continuing.
"The technologies you've seen today, teleportation, neural interfaces, quantum manipulation, represent a fraction of what we've developed. We kept these advances hidden not out of deception, but out of respect for the established order, out of a genuine desire to be good neighbors."
"If that were true," the chairperson countered, "you would have disclosed these capabilities when joining the community." "And would you have welcomed us if we had?" Blackwood asked.
"Or would you have deemed us too dangerous to exist? Your actions against us now suggest the latter." She gestured again, and the display shifted to show Earth from orbit, the planet now surrounded by a shimmering energy field that hadn't been there before.
"This protective barrier is now in place around our system. It selectively permits or denies entry based on parameters we control. Consider it our new border security." "You cannot isolate yourselves from the galactic community," Zerl protested. "The economic and diplomatic repercussions will be minimal," Blackwood interrupted. "We've been self-sufficient for centuries. Our dependence on galactic trade was another part of our facade, a way to appear integrated while maintaining our independence." The council chamber erupted in overlapping protests and demands, which Blackwood allowed to continue for several moments before raising a hand. Surprisingly, the delegates fell silent.
"I'm not here to threaten you,"
she said, her tone softening slightly. "Despite what you may believe about human nature, we don't seek conflict. We seek coexistence, but on equal terms, not as your subordinates or your potential victims." She straightened in her chair, her posture now formal. "Effective immediately, Earth is declaring itself an independent system, no longer subject to Galactic Council oversight. We will defend our borders, but we have no territorial ambitions beyond our solar system. We will continue scientific and cultural exchange with any species that approaches us in good faith, and we will return the captured Crevage personnel and vessels once we've completed our analysis of their data." "And if we don't accept these terms?" the chairperson asked.
Blackwood's expression remained neutral, but her eyes hardened. Then we stop pretending to be civilized by your definition of the word. The Kravaj fleet we captured? It's currently on its way to key strategic locations throughout Council space. Not as an invasion force, but as a demonstration. The display changed again, showing Kravaj ships entering orbit around various homeworlds of Council species.
We have no desire for conquest or domination, Blackwood emphasized. But make no mistake, if provoked further, we will respond with the full measure of capabilities we've kept hidden. And trust me when I say, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg. The council chamber fell into shocked silence.
You have 24 standard hours to formalize recognition of Earth's independent status, Blackwood concluded. I suggest you use that time wisely. With that, the transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Security Council in disarray. Lieutenant Davies found General Blackwood in the observation dome of the Antarctic facility, staring up at the stars through the transparent ceiling. The aurora australis painted the sky in dancing greens and purples, a stark contrast to the clinical white of the facility itself. Mission accomplished, General, Davies reported. The captured ships have reached their designated positions. No resistance encountered. And our guest? Blackwood asked without turning. Admiral Kazit is ready for your interview. He's been cooperative, especially after we showed him the footage from the council chamber. Blackwood nodded, still gazing upward. The transmission was received by all 347 member worlds, as well as the independent systems. The response has been varied, but the prevailing sentiment is shock followed by pragmatic recalculation. No calls for immediate military action? None yet. The Council is in emergency session, but our intelligence suggests they're leaning toward accepting our terms. The demonstration was persuasive. Davies moved to stand beside her, following her gaze to the stars.
Was it always going to end this way? He asked quietly.
When humanity first went to the stars, did we always plan to reveal ourselves like this? Blackwood sighed. Protocol Omega was established as insurance, not as a plan. The hope was that we'd never need to use it, that we could gradually integrate our advanced technologies into the galactic mainstream without triggering the very fear response we've just witnessed. But you were prepared for this outcome. I was prepared for all outcomes, Blackwood corrected. That's the job. She turned to face him for the first time, and Davies was struck by the weariness in her eyes, a stark contrast to the confident, almost intimidating figure she presented to the Council. The universe isn't kind to species that can't defend themselves, Lieutenant. Humanity learned that lesson through millennia of our own brutal history. When we united and looked to the stars, we hoped to find something better. And in many ways we did. The galactic community has brought peace and prosperity to countless worlds. But underneath that veneer of civilization, the same old fears and power dynamics persist. The strong still dictate terms to the weak. The established still resist the emerging. We just happen to be on the other side of the equation this time. Davies nodded thoughtfully. And now? Now we negotiate from a position of strength rather than perceived weakness. We establish new diplomatic relations. We gradually, carefully share some of our advancements, the beneficial ones, the ones that can improve lives across the galaxy without destabilizing the power balance. And Protocol Omega? Remains active, but recedes into the background again, Blackwood said firmly. We didn't reveal all our capabilities today, not by a long shot. Some secrets should remain secret. She gestured toward the door.
Come on, let's go talk to our guest. I think Admiral Kizet will play an important role in what comes next. Admiral Kizet was pacing in his holding cell when Blackwood and Davies arrived.
The cell was comfortable by any standards, more like high-security guest quarters than a prison. But the force field at the entrance made its purpose clear enough.
Admiral, Blackwood greeted him.
I trust you've been treated well. Kizet's mandibles clicked in what Davies recognized as the Kravaj equivalent of a humorless laugh. Quite well, General. Your hospitality is almost as surprising as your military capabilities. Blackwood nodded to the guard, who deactivated the force field. She entered, followed by Davies, and the field reactivated behind them. Please sit. Blackwood gestured to the seating area. Once they were all settled, she continued.
I'll be direct, Admiral. Your mission failed. The Council's attempt to eliminate us has backfired spectacularly. The question now is, what happens next? Kizet's compound eyes studied her carefully. You've made your position clear to the Council. I assume my fate depends on their response. Not entirely, Blackwood replied. You were following orders.
acting within your understanding of galactic security protocols. There's no personal animosity here. How magnanimous. Kazit clicked, clearly surprised.
I confess, this matches nothing in our psychological profiles of humans. Those profiles were based on our public face, Blackwood explained. The face we chose to present. Like all intelligent species, we contain multitudes.
Clearly, Kazet agreed. But I still don't understand why you've brought me here. If not to gloat or threaten, then why?
Because I have a proposal, Blackwood said.
One that could benefit both our species and potentially the wider galactic community. She activated a holographic display between them, showing a star map of the region around Earth and Kravaj space.
Your species and ours have more in common than you might think. We're both adaptable, resilient, and protective of our interests. We both have histories marked by internal conflicts before achieving unification, and we both understand the value of strategic thinking. You suggest an alliance? Kazit's mandibles clicked rapidly in what Davies recognized as surprise.
After we tried to conquer your world, I suggest a reset, Blackwood corrected. The Council manipulated your species into attacking ours, based on their fears, but those fears were rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of human intentions. And what are human intentions exactly? Kezit asked. To survive, to thrive, to explore and understand the universe, to preserve our autonomy without threatening others. Blackwood replied simply.
Not so different from your own, I imagine. Kezit was silent for a long moment, his compound eyes fixed on the star map.
The Council will not easily accept a human Kravaj alliance, he finally said. Such a partnership would shift the balance of power significantly.
The balance of power has already shifted, Davies pointed out. We've demonstrated capabilities that change the strategic calculation. The question is whether that change leads to further conflict or to a new equilibrium. And you believe I can help achieve this equilibrium? Kazet asked. I do, Blackwood nodded. As the commander who led the attack on Earth, your perspective carries weight. If you return to your people with a message of cooperation rather than continued hostility, it creates a path forward that doesn't involve further military action. And what would this cooperation entail? Initially, information exchange. Your analysts study our technology. Our analysts study yours. We establish diplomatic relations, cultural exchange programs, eventually perhaps joint scientific initiatives. And military cooperation? Kazit pressed. That would depend on mutual trust built over time, Blackwood replied honestly. We're not looking to create a military bloc in opposition to the Council. We're looking to create a stable relationship that benefits both our species while reassuring others that neither of us poses a threat. Kazit's antennae twitched thoughtfully. An interesting proposal, General. But why should I trust that your sudden revelation of superior capabilities stops here? How do I know there aren't more surprises waiting? Blackwood smiled slightly. You don't. Just as we don't know what capabilities the Kravaj might have hidden from the wider galaxy. Trust is built on uncertainty, Admiral. On choosing to move forward despite not having all the answers. The Admiral's carapace shifted colors slightly, a sign of deep consideration among his species. I will need to consult with my government, he finally said. Of course, Blackwood agreed. We'll arrange secure communications, but before you do, there's something else you should see. She adjusted the holographic display, and a new image appeared. The aftermath of the Kravaj attack on Earth. Cities in ruins, landscapes scarred by orbital bombardment, refugee camps stretching to the horizon. This is the reality we're dealing with, Admiral. Millions dead, billions displaced. Damage that will take decades to repair. I show you this not to inspire guilt, but to ensure you understand what's at stake. The next conflict, if it comes, will be even worse, for both sides. Kazit's color darkened, the Kravaj equivalent of solemnity. I understand, General, and I will convey this reality to my government. War is sometimes necessary, but rarely desirable. On that, at least, we agree, Blackwood said, deactivating the display, which gives me hope that we can agree on other things as well. 1 week later. The observation platform atop the newly rebuilt UEDC headquarters in Geneva offered a panoramic view of the city. Construction drones buzzed overhead, repairing damaged buildings and infrastructure with remarkable speed, one of many technologies that humanity had kept hidden but was now employing openly. Colonel Volkov joined General Blackwood at the railing, handing her a cup of coffee. The council vote is complete, he reported.
Earth's independent status has been formally recognized by a margin of 18-5.
Better than expected, Blackwood nodded.
And the Cravages?
Their High Command has approved preliminary diplomatic talks, starting next month. Admiral Kazit will lead their delegation. Good. He's a reasonable being once you get past the mandible-clicking and territorial displays. Volkov smiled slightly.
The Admiral said something similar about you, actually, though he referenced human stubbornness rather than mandible-clicking. Blackwood laughed, a genuine sound that Volkov hadn't heard from her since before the invasion. Fair enough, she conceded.
What about public opinion? How are people adjusting to the revelations about Protocol Omega?
Volkov's expression turned more serious.
Mixed, as you'd expect. Relief that we survived the invasion, certainly. Pride in our capabilities. But also anger that such technologies were kept secret, and concern about what this means for Earth's future. All reasonable reactions, Blackwood acknowledged. We've lived a lie for 3 centuries. It will take time for society to process that. Some are calling for your resignation, Volkov added,
arguing that Protocol Omega represents an unacceptable breach of democratic governance. Also reasonable, Blackwood nodded. And once the immediate crisis is fully resolved, I'll likely step down. A military director is appropriate during conflict, but peace requires civilian leadership. Below them, the city was coming back to life. People filled the streets, shops were reopening. Children played in parks that had been combat zones just days earlier. Humanity was resilient, if nothing else.
What do you think happens next?
Volkov asked, his gaze following hers to the recovering city below.
Blackwood took a long sip of her coffee before answering.
History suggests 3 possibilities, she said finally. First, despite our show of force, someone decides to test us anyway. The galactic community fractures, alliances form, and we end up in exactly the kind of large-scale conflict we hope to avoid.
That seems counterproductive after what they've seen, Volkov noted.
Fear makes species do counterproductive things, Blackwood shrugged.
I've allocated resources to maintain our defensive posture for precisely this reason. The second possibility? The galaxy adapts. Earth becomes a respected but slightly feared independent power. Trade resumes on more equitable terms. Cultural exchange deepens. Scientific collaboration advances, with us gradually introducing some of our technologies to improve quality of life across species. Not utopia, but peaceful coexistence. And the third? Blackwood's expression turned contemplative.
The most interesting one. Our revelation forces a fundamental reconsideration of how the galactic community functions. If we've been hiding our capabilities, how many other species have done the same? The current power structure is built on incomplete information and mutual deception. That's not sustainable. You think other species will reveal hidden technologies? Some will. Others will develop new ones, now that they've seen it's possible to advance beyond community standards. The equilibrium has been disrupted. Change is inevitable. Volkov frowned. That sounds dangerously destabilizing.
Change always is, Blackwood agreed.
But it's also necessary. The system that led to an unprovoked attack on Earth was fundamentally flawed. Perhaps what comes next will be better.
Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime.
Volkov checked his comm device. Lieutenant Davies has arrived with the Cravage diplomatic advance team, he reported. They're waiting in the conference room. Blackwood nodded, finishing her coffee.
Time to get to work, then.
The conference room fell silent as Blackwood entered, flanked by Volkov and 2 other UEDC officials. On the other side of the table sat Admiral Kazit, now wearing the formal diplomatic regalia of the Cravage hegemony, along with 3 representatives from his species.
Admiral, Blackwood greeted, inclining her head slightly. Or should I say, diplomatic envoy Kazit. The Cravage's mandibles clicked in what humans were beginning to recognize as their version of a wry smile. The promotion was unexpected, I admit. It seems my failure has been reinterpreted as an opportunity. Failure often contains the seeds of progress, Blackwood offered.
Thank you for returning to Earth under these different circumstances.
The High Command was persuaded by your arguments, and by the reality of your capabilities, Kazit acknowledged.
We are a pragmatic species. Adaptation is our strength.
Something we have in common, Blackwood said, taking her seat. Shall we begin? For the next 3 hours, they outlined the framework for what would become known as the Earth-Cravage Accord. It was a remarkable document, not just for its content, but for how quickly and smoothly it came together.
Both sides were motivated by a mix of pragmatism and genuine curiosity about the other. When they finally paused for a refreshment break, Blackwood found herself standing next to Kizit by the viewport overlooking Lake Geneva. "Your world is beautiful," the Cravage envoy commented. "I regret that my first experience of it was through targeting systems." "We're resilient," Blackwood replied. "The damage will heal." "Your people as well?" Blackwood considered this. "Healing takes different forms. Physical reconstruction is already underway. Psychological recovery will take longer. Trust, longer still." "And trust is essential for what we're attempting to build," Kizit observed. "Yes, which is why transparency is crucial moving forward," Blackwood agreed. "The old approach, hiding capabilities, maintaining facades, led us to conflict. We need a new paradigm." Kizit's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "The Cravage have a concept, tsklur, difficult to translate precisely. It means strength revealed makes peace possible. An apt philosophy for our current situation." Blackwood nodded. "There is a question my government instructed me to ask," Kizit said, his tone shifting to something more formal. "One that may determine the nature of our future relations." "Ask it." Project Lazarus, Protocol Omega, these were defensive measures activated in response to our attack. But what of your long-term intentions? With capabilities such as yours, expansion would be tempting. Blackwood turned to face the Cravage envoy directly, recognizing the crucial moment for what it was. Humanity spent millennia expanding across our own world, often at the expense of other humans and countless species. We nearly destroyed ourselves in the process. When we finally unified, we made a choice to focus our ambitions upward and outward, not in conquest, but in understanding. She gestured toward the stars, just becoming visible as dusk approached. "Our goal isn't territorial expansion, Admiral. It's exploration, discovery. The universe is vast beyond comprehension. Why waste energy conquering when there's so much to learn?" The Cravage studied her with all four of his eye stalks. "A noble sentiment, General. But history suggests that capabilities eventually find expression." "They already have," Blackwood said. "The technologies we've kept hidden weren't developed for conquest. They were developed to transcend limitations, of distance, of understanding, of physical form itself. We've been exploring the universe in ways the community hasn't imagined, without ever leaving our solar system." Kizit's color shifted to a shade Davies had identified as indicating surprise. "You speak of dimensional exploration, consciousness transfer?" "Among other things," Blackwood acknowledged. "Areas of research the community banned without fully understanding their potential. Because the risks can be managed with proper protocols," Blackwood finished. "Just as we've managed the risks of teleportation, which the community abandoned after a single disaster." "This is not what my government anticipated," Kizit admitted. "Then perhaps our first act of trust should be showing rather than telling," Blackwood suggested. "Would your delegation be interested in a tour of one of our research facilities? Not a military installation, but a scientific one. Let us show you what humanity has really been working toward all these centuries." The Cravage's carapace flushed with colors that cycled through uncertainty to curiosity. "I would need to consult." "Of course," Blackwood nodded. "Take whatever time you need." 3 days later, Admiral Kizet stood in the observation chamber of the Prometheus complex, located beneath the Olympus Mons on Mars. The facility had been hidden from the galactic community's orbital surveys by technology that bent light and other scanning frequencies around it, making it appear as natural terrain. "This is unexpected," the Admiral admitted, watching as human scientists moved through the vast chamber below. They were interacting with what appeared to be portals of some kind, shimmering doorways that opened onto landscapes that couldn't possibly exist on Mars. "What you're seeing is the culmination of 5 centuries of research," explained Dr. Layla Kapoor, the facility's director. "These are dimensional apertures, gateways to parallel realities that exist alongside our own. The community banned such research after the Voltarian collapse," Kizet noted, though his tone held more fascination than accusation. "The Voltarians attempted to create alternate dimensions," Dr. Kapoor corrected. "We're simply connecting to ones that already exist. The difference is significant, both philosophically and practically." Lieutenant Davies, who had been assigned as the Admiral's liaison, added, "It's the difference between trying to build a new house while you're standing in it versus finding a door to a house that's already been built." Kzet's antenna twitched with interest as he observed a team of researchers return through one of the portals, carefully cataloging specimens and data they'd collected.
And the purpose of this research? Knowledge, Dr. Kapoor said simply.
Understanding the fundamental nature of reality. Discovering principles that could revolutionize everything from energy production to medicine.
But not weapons?
Kzet pressed. Dr. Kapoor's expression grew serious. Admiral, if we wanted weapons, we've had access to forces that could tear planets apart for over 2 centuries. We haven't used them because our goal isn't destruction or domination. She gestured to the chamber below. This facility represents humanity's true ambition. To push beyond conventional limitations. To understand the universe in all its complexity. The military technologies you encountered during your invasion were developed as protection for this work, not as ends in themselves. And yet you kept all of this hidden, Kzet observed. Because the community wasn't ready, Davies replied. Your reaction to just the hint of our capabilities proved that. Dr. Kapoor nodded. But now that circumstances have forced our hand, we have a choice. Retreat into isolation and secrecy, or attempt something bolder, sharing our discoveries with species who are willing to approach them with open minds. Starting with the Cravages? Kzet clicked, his compound eyes fixed on the portals below. Why not? Blackwood said, entering the observation chamber. Your species values adaptation and pragmatism. You understand survival imperatives, and you've just had a first-hand lesson in the dangers of following community dogma without question. A diplomatic way of saying we attacked you based on flawed intelligence and outdated prejudices, Kzet noted dryly. Precisely, Blackwood smiled, which makes you ideal partners for what comes next. And what does come next, General? Kzet asked, turning all 4 eye stalks toward her. A new paradigm, Blackwood replied. One where knowledge is shared rather than hoarded or suppressed. Where exploration takes precedence over control. Where different evolutionary paths and perspectives are seen as assets rather than threats. An ambitious vision, Kzet acknowledged. Ambitious, yes, but necessary, Blackwood said firmly. The current system nearly led to our destruction, and would have eventually led to conflicts with other species as they developed beyond community constraints, as they inevitably will. She moved to stand beside the Admiral, both of them now looking out over the research chamber. We have an opportunity here, Admiral, not just to prevent further conflict between our species, but to chart a new course for interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. Kzet was silent for a long moment, his color shifting through various hues as he processed what he'd seen and heard. My government will want assurances, he finally said.
Protocols, oversight mechanisms. Of course, Blackwood nodded.
We're not suggesting blind trust. We're suggesting a collaborative framework that respects both our interests. And if the community objects, Kzet asked, they will see any independent alliance as a threat to their authority.
Blackwood's expression hardened slightly.
Then they will need to reconsider what that authority is based on. Fear and suppression are poor foundations for lasting stability. 6 months later, Galactic Security Council Headquarters Centauri Prime. The emergency session of the Galactic Security Council had been in progress for nearly 14 standard hours, with no sign of resolution. The chamber, usually a model of orderly discourse, had devolved into factions barely maintaining diplomatic protocols. The Vkr'lak Scientific Cooperative represents a direct challenge to Council authority, insisted Delegate Huzrel, whose once dominant Futurian conclave had lost significant influence since the Earth incident. Their open research protocols undermine the very safety measures that have preserved galactic peace for millennia.
And yet, countered the Tantaran representative, 7 member species have already applied to join the cooperative. Are we to sanction them all? Expel 1/3 of our membership? If necessary, yes, Zurl chittered. The humans have corrupted the Cravages with promises of forbidden knowledge. Now they seek to corrupt others. The danger cannot be overstated. The Malurian chairperson's gelatinous form pulsed with the equivalent of a weary sigh. Perhaps we should hear directly from the subjects of our debate before making further judgments. At the chairperson's signal, the chamber's central platform activated, revealing holographic projections of General Blackwood and diplomatic envoy Kzet. General Envoy, the chairperson acknowledged. The council has been discussing your initiative with some concern. So we've heard, Blackwood replied calmly, though discussing seems a generous term for what appears to be happening in your chamber. You stand accused of undermining council authority and violating fundamental safety protocols. The chairperson continued, ignoring the jab.
How do you respond? Kizit spoke first, his mandibles clicking deliberately. With respect, Chairperson, the cooperative violates no provision of the Galactic Charter. We have established independent research agreements, as is our right as sovereign entities. The Council has no authority to prohibit such agreements. The research itself violates community standards, Hezerl interjected. Community standards are guidelines, not laws, Blackwood pointed out, and they're guidelines established without full understanding of the technologies they restrict. We're offering a chance to revisit those standards based on new data and careful protocols. Data that your species deliberately concealed, Hezerl accused. Yes, Blackwood acknowledged frankly. We concealed our capabilities because we understood how the community would react, exactly as you're reacting now, with fear rather than curiosity, with suppression rather than engagement. The chairperson's form rippled with irritation. This debate is unproductive. The Council must decide whether the cooperative can be permitted to continue its work, or whether sanctions are required. Before you vote, Blackwood said, her tone shifting to something more formal, I should inform you that representatives from 14 species, 7 current Council members, and 7 independent systems are currently touring the Prometheus complex on Mars. What they're seeing there will likely influence their positions, regardless of what this chamber decides today. The announcement sent shockwaves through the Council. The chairperson's form pulsed rapidly, the Malurian equivalent of alarm. You invited Council members to your research facility without authorization? They requested the opportunity, and we granted it, Kizet corrected. As is their sovereign right. The cooperative operates on principles of transparency and informed consent, concepts this Council might benefit from adopting. Before the chairperson could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the chamber. Council members' communication devices activated simultaneously, displaying messages from their respective governments. What is happening? The chairperson demanded.
It appears, Blackwood said calmly, that the tour has concluded, and your representatives are sharing their observations. Over the next several minutes, the Council chamber descended into barely controlled chaos. Species that had been staunchly opposed to the cooperative were now receiving instructions from their governments to moderate their positions. Others were being recalled entirely, to be replaced by representatives more aligned with the new political reality. This is manipulation, Hezerl accused, even as his own communication device chimed with messages from the Futurian conclave. This is adaptation, Kizet corrected. Something every successful species must master eventually. The chairperson, sensing the dramatic shift in the political landscape, made a pragmatic decision. This session is adjourned for 24 standard hours, they announced. We will reconvene after consulting with our respective governments. As the projections of Blackwood and Kizet faded, the chairperson remained in the now emptying chamber, their gelatinous form undulating with what might have been concern, or perhaps, just maybe, a hint of curiosity. 1 year later, Earth, Geneva UEDC headquarters. The observation platform that had once hosted a somber conversation between Blackwood and Volkov was now transformed into a reception area. Representatives from 28 species mingled under the evening sky, Earth's full moon casting a silver glow over the proceedings. Davies, now promoted to captain, found Blackwood at the railing, momentarily apart from the festivities. Quite a turnout, he commented, joining her. The Xylosians just arrived. That makes 4 former Council leadership species now officially part of the cooperative. And the Futurians? Blackwood asked. Still holding out officially, but they've sent 3 observer delegations in the past month. It's only a matter of time. Blackwood nodded, her gaze moving across the gathering. Humans and aliens conversed in small groups, their translators occasionally glitching over specialized technical terminology that hadn't existed in the shared lexicon until recently. Did you ever think we'd get here? Davies asked. When you activated Protocol Omega, did you imagine this outcome? Not precisely, Blackwood admitted. The survival scenario was most probable. The isolation scenario was prepared for. This, she gestured to the diverse gathering. This was the aspirational case. Speaking of aspirations, Davies said, the Civilian Oversight Committee is asking about your plans now that the transition is complete. Blackwood smiled slightly. They want to know if I'm finally stepping down? The term they used was transitioning to an advisory role, Davies corrected diplomatically. Tell them yes, Blackwood said. It's time. The crisis phase is over. The cooperative has its own momentum now, and frankly, I'm tired of being the face of humanity's great deception. Not deception, came a familiar chittering voice.
Strategic revelation. They turned to find Admiral, now High Envoy, Kazet approaching, his carapace adorned with the formal colors of both the Kravaj hegemony and the cooperative. A diplomatic distinction, Blackwood smiled.
But I appreciate the sentiment. The Malurian chairperson has just arrived, Kizet informed them. Their first official visit to Earth, a significant gesture. One that would have been unthinkable a year ago, Davies noted. Much was unthinkable a year ago, Kest agreed.
Including the notion that the Kravaj and humans would become allies after an attempted conquest. History often turns on such ironies, Blackwood said.
Our greatest crises can become our greatest opportunities, if we're willing to see them as such. Their conversation was interrupted as Dr. Kapoor approached, accompanied by a delegation of scientists from various species.
General, we're ready for the demonstration, if you're available, she said. Blackwood nodded. Of course. The group moved to the center of the platform, where a small device had been installed. Dr. Kapoor activated it, and a miniature dimensional aperture appeared, similar to those in the Prometheus complex, but on a much smaller scale.
This is the first portable aperture generator, Dr. Kapoor explained to the assembled dignitaries who had gathered around.
The culmination of collaborative research between 7 cooperative species. It represents not just technological advancement, but a new approach to discovery itself. As the scientists began a detailed technical explanation, Blackwood found herself standing between Davies and Kazet, slightly removed from the center of attention. You know what really grinds my gears about humans? Kazet clicked quietly, echoing his words from that fateful day aboard his flagship.
Blackwood raised an eyebrow.
What's that?
They don't even have the decency to be predictable, the Kravaj said, his mandibles moving in what humans now recognized as their version of a smile.
Just when you think you understand them, they surprise you again. That's not just humans, Davies pointed out. That's intelligent life in general, always adapting, always evolving.
Perhaps, Kazet acknowledged, but humans seem particularly adept at it. We've had practice, Blackwood said, her gaze moving from the demonstration to the stars above.
Lots and lots of practice. As the evening progressed, the gathering gradually moved indoors.
Blackwood remained on the platform alone, watching the city lights below and the stars above.
A year ago, those stars had seemed like distant points of light behind an invisible barrier of community restrictions and humanity's own deception. Now they represented possibilities, new understandings, new alliances, new frontiers.
The door behind her slid open, and Colonel Volkov joined her at the railing.
The Malurian chairperson is asking for you, he said.
Something about formalizing the Council's new relationship with the cooperative. I'll be there in a moment. Blackwood nodded. They're also saying this will be your last official act as director before transitioning to civilian oversight, Volkov added. How does that feel? Blackwood considered the question, looking out over the city that had been rebuilt after near destruction.
In many ways, it was a metaphor for humanity's journey. Devastated, then reconstructed, but with the knowledge and resilience gained through crisis. It feels right, she said finally. We've spent centuries hiding what we're capable of. Then we spent a year demonstrating it. Now it's time to move beyond capabilities and focus on possibilities.
And Protocol Omega? Volkov asked quietly. Remains in place, Blackwood said firmly. Trust is building, but the universe is vast and full of unknowns. We'll maintain our insurance policy, just more transparently than before. Volkov nodded, understanding. Ready to go in? Almost, Blackwood said, taking a final look at the night sky.
You know, for all our advanced technology, all our hidden capabilities, humanity's greatest strength has never been our weapons or our science. What is it then? Our ability to imagine something better than what exists, Blackwood replied.
And our stubborn determination to make that imagination real. She turned from the railing, straightening her uniform one last time.
Now I'm ready. Together, they walked back into the headquarters, leaving the platform empty save for the soft glow of Earth's lights below and the distant stars above, no longer symbols of separation but of connection, of possibility, of a future where understanding replaced fear and cooperation replaced conflict. A future that had begun with a simple, defiant message. Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be civilized.